The strangest thing about that night was how quiet it started. You know how some evenings in camp just seem too still, like the trees are holding their breath. That's how it felt as I lay there in the pop-up camper with my folks, the canvas walls barely rustling. We had been warned about bears in the area, so everything edible had been packed carefully into the car. At least, that's what we thought. I was just drifting off, lulled by the soft creak of branches overhead, when the whole camper gave a sudden jolt, like something had leaned against it. At first, I figured it was my dad shifting in his sleep, but then came the sound, metal crunching, liquid fizzing, and a sort of wet slurping that didn't belong in any dream. My mom whispered, "What is that?" And my dad sat up fast, his weight making the bed dip. Then came another crunch, sharper this time, followed by a hiss. That's when it hit me. Something was opening cans. We'd stashed a couple 12 packs of soda under the bed platform, thinking nothing of it. Turns out, bears have an incredible nose for sugar, even if it's sealed in aluminum. My heart thumped as the camper swayed again. Dad scrambled for a flashlight, muttering about scaring it off, but before he could do anything, we heard the pots and pans we'd left stacked outside clatter to the ground, knocked aside by something heavy. My mom pulled me close, and I could feel her heart pounding as hard as mine. Then came the strangest realization of all. The bear wasn't interested in everything down there. It was being picky, nosing through the carton, tearing into the root beer cans, and ignoring the diet sodas completely. Every hiss of a punctured can, every bubbly slurp, sent shivers down my spine. Lying there, I couldn't decide whether to laugh or scream. That night taught me more about food storage than any ranger talk ever could. We weren't just camping. We were sharing the forest with a guest who had a sweet tooth and no manners, and the way the camper shuddered with each move he made. Well, I'll tell you this. I didn't sleep a wink until the headlights of our car finally flicked on and sent that sugar-thieving shadow lumbering back into the trees. When the bear finally shuffled off into the darkness, lured away by the sudden flood of headlights, silence fell over camp. But it wasn't the kind of silence that comforts you. It was brittle, fragile, the kind where every creak of the trees or snap of a twig sets your nerves on edge. My dad sat in the driver's seat of the car a moment longer, gripping the wheel as if he'd just chased the thing off by sheer willpower. When he stepped back out, the flashlight beam swept over the crushed cans, littering the ground like some strange battlefield. Sticky foam glistened in the dirt, and the air smelled like a soda fountain left too long in the sun. Inside the camper, my mom whispered that we should pack up right then and there, drive into town, find a motel. Dad shook his head, firm but tired. If we run now, we'll just be back tomorrow with the same problem. His voice carried that edge of determination that comes when you know you've made a mistake, but you're not going to let it beat you twice. So, instead of sleeping, we cleaned. In the weak glow of lantern and flashlight, we gathered the dented cans, wiped up what we could, and stashed the soggy cardboard cartons in the car. The root beer bear had left us quite a mess. My shoes stuck to the dirt with every step, and my hands smelled of syrup even after rinsing in the little tin basin. The strangest part was the neatness of his preference. Every root beer gone, every diet can untouched. I couldn't help but think of the bear out there in the woods, buzzed on sugar, burping contentedly as it lumbered away. We tried to settle down again afterward, but none of us could really rest. Every shuffle of leaves had us holding our breath. Every gust of wind set the camper canvas quivering, like something pressing against it. My dad finally gave up on sleep altogether, pulling a chair outside by the dying fire and keeping watch with the flashlight across his knees. I peeked out once and saw him staring into the tree line, his silhouette steady but his shoulders tight. It was a long night, the kind that stretches out endlessly when your imagination won't stop painting pictures in the dark. And yet, in that tension, I felt something curious. Like we weren't just visitors in the forest anymore. We were participants, folded into the rhythms of the night, reminded that this wasn't our world to control. The lesson was a sticky one, but it was clear. In the woods, even root beer can call the wild right to your doorstep. When the first gray light of dawn seeped through the canvas, it felt like a blessing. The woods slowly came alive again. Timid birds testing the air with short whistles, then bolder calls echoing across the valley. I crawled out of my sleeping bag, stiff and groggy, but grateful that the night was over. The cool morning breeze carried the faint scent of pine, dew, and, still, sticky sweetness from the bear's midnight feast. Stepping outside, I saw the full extent of the damage. The campsite looked as though a pack of mischievous kids had thrown a wild party and left in a hurry. Shredded soda cartons lay scattered. The aluminum cans twisted and punctured with neat fang holes. Flies already hovered over the patches of spilled root beer, buzzing lazily in the warming air. My boots crunched on the dried syrup that had seeped into the soil, leaving the dirt crusty and dark. Dad was sitting on the same camp chair, chin in his hand, clearly never having dozed off. He gave me a weary smile. Morning, guess we'll have some explaining to do when the ranger comes around. Mom emerged soon after, wrapping her jacket tight against the morning chill, shaking her head at the sight of the sticky battlefield. She didn't say, "I told you so," but her eyes did plenty of talking. The strangest part, though, wasn't the mess itself. It was the tracks. Just beyond camp, pressed deep into the damp earth, were paw prints leading straight out of the trees, across the fire ring, and up to the camper. They were huge, each one bigger than my open hand, the claws leaving faint grooves in the soil. Seeing them in daylight was something else entirely. In the dark, the bear had been just a sound, a presence, a threat. But now, those prints spelled out exactly how close it had been, how casually it had walked into our little world without hesitation. I knelt beside the prints, running my fingers along the edges, feeling the damp earth crumble. It gave me a chill, half fear, half awe. To think, while I lay awake inside a thin canvas wall, that enormous animal had been right there, sipping soda like it belonged, which in a way it did. We spent the morning scrubbing down what we could, packing trash into bags, and dragging our cooler and food bins to the car for good measure. Breakfast was simple, dry cereal and some fruit, since none of us felt like risking another cooking mishap that might draw attention. As we ate, the forest seemed back to normal, almost as if nothing had happened. But I knew better. The prints in the dirt and the faint smell of sugar in the air were reminders that the wilderness always keeps its own score. The ranger arrived mid-morning, his truck rumbling down the dirt road with a trail of dust curling up behind it. He stepped out wearing a wide-brimmed hat, the kind that looked like it had seen years of sun, and gave us a friendly wave. At first glance, you'd think he was just another camper passing through, but the way his eyes scanned the sight told a different story. He wasn't looking at us, he was reading the ground. "Bear trouble?" he asked before we'd even opened our mouths. Dad chuckled ruefully and nodded, pointing to the shredded cans piled neatly by the fire ring. The ranger crouched down, picked up one of the punctured sodas, and held it like evidence. "Root beer, huh, figures. They've got a nose for sugar, won't touch the diet stuff." His words matched exactly what we'd seen, and that little confirmation sent a fresh shiver through me. He walked over to the prints I'd been staring at earlier and studied them with a practiced eye. Young male, most likely. Curious but not desperate. Lucky for you, he wasn't after more than a snack. He said it calmly, like it was the most ordinary thing in the world. But to me, the tracks still looked enormous, like something out of a storybook monster tale. Mom asked, a little sharply, if it was safe for us to stay. The ranger straightened up, dusting his hands. Safe as you make it, he said. Bears remember where they find food. If he comes back and learns there's nothing left, he'll move on. If not, well, you'll see him again. And believe me, he'll expect dessert. That put a knot in my stomach, but the ranger didn't mean it as a threat. He was teaching, plain and simple. He explained how scents travel, how even unopened cans could give off enough of a smell to draw an animal from half a mile away. He pointed out that our trash bags, even sealed, would be a magnet if we didn't get them into the bear box at the campground. Every word he spoke chipped away at the false sense of control we'd carried in with us. After a while, he gave us a half smile, the kind that says he'd seen this same scene a dozen times before. Don't let it scare you off, he said, tipping his hat. Most folks pack up and never come back, but the ones who learn from it, they end up with the best stories. And with that, he climbed back into his truck, leaving us in the settling dust, his words lingering heavier than the smell of spilled soda. I remember sitting there, staring at the crushed cans glinting in the sunlight, thinking how strange it was that a creature could change the entire rhythm of our trip in just one night. The forest felt different now. Not hostile, exactly, but alive in a way I hadn't recognized before.